Okay, so today's presentation obviously is 10 reasons Google hates your manufacturing website and the best thing what you can do about it. One thing real quick, as Christy said, so please do provide any questions through GoToMeeting as you come across them. We will answer a few as we get going, but we will have time at the end to really dedicate to questions. All right, so with that, here we go. Okay, so quickly, who's talking at you just real quick? I'm John Daters. I'm the Senior Account Strategist here at Sync Show. I am an author, presenter, father, and full-time geek. I'm also a dad joke aficionado. I didn't add that one in there, but I'm going to pepper a few in. So I think my personality will come through on this a little bit. So I have also worked on a number of accounts, not necessarily just with Sync Show, but throughout. Some of the larger names that folks may recognize, KeyBank, that's B2B and B2C, Abbott Nutrition, again, B2B, B2C. Nolan Sauter are both B2B and B2C furniture manufacturers. IGS Energy is obviously an energy provider based out of Columbus, Ohio, B2B and B2C again, and a few other ones as well too. For example, Miller Wellsmaster. So feel free to check me out on LinkedIn or send me an email at the email address there as needed for follow-up whenever you like. Okay, so that's me and just a real quick spiel about Sync Show. So Sync Show is a strategic marketing partner for B2B manufacturers, logistics, and professional service companies committed to growth. We focus only on these areas here. So we're not your general digital marketing agency that just focuses anywhere. We really do focus our attention on manufacturers and those that support manufacturing. And in the end, what we really like to look at is we push really strategies and tactics that drive results, not just kind of vanity marketing metrics. We like to drive you leads, make you money. Okay, now let's get into it. So I'd like to start with why you should actually care about Google. I know a lot of you probably already have a good understanding of Google's scope, but it is good to talk about just the volume in which Google does business and why, not just locally or domestically, but even internationally, Google is the powerhouse. Once we set the framework for why we're focusing on Google today, we'll go ahead and get into those 10 reasons, okay? So first of all, Google dominates the world of search. This graphic here, this is actually kind of on the low end. You can see the blue Pac-Man size portion of the pie chart there. How many of you would like to control 70% of the worldwide market share in anything? I know I would. You can see that yellow slice there, Baidu. Not a lot of people know what that is. In the manufacturing world, I'm guessing more of you do. That's China's Google. That's China's search engine. Only in China do people really use Baidu, and that throws off our numbers. So if we were to get rid of that, Google would have an even larger piece of the pie. Okay. One important thing, though, we are focusing on Google today, and Google is a big powerhouse. But even if we remove Google, that still leaves almost 25% of searches worldwide from the other folks. While Google is a big player and you have to placate Google, you cannot ignore the others. That's a whole nother discussion as well too. But a good business owner knows that you're not going to not talk to or work on 25% of your business segment. And in the world of search, all the others equal 25%. Okay. So Google search engine, or Google search by country. So that was worldwide. I just wanted to show this real quick. You can see that the second to the last bar there is Google USA. You know, it's about, like I said, 80-something% if you take out Baidu. And that purple over there is China. That's the Baidu. You can see where it really takes the slice out. But if you thought Google had market penetration in the USA, take a look at Brazil. It's almost 100% market penetration, market dominance there. All right. So if any of you guys are looking to sell internationally, it becomes even more, not less important to make sure that Google's that you're not running afoul of Google. Okay. And then just the last piece on Google here. So a couple things to point out. That circle on the left where it says 500, that's on average, and that's from Moz, the main authority in search research. On average, their annual, the amount of times they make algorithm updates annually. That's a lot. Now, the chart on the right are how many times they make major algorithm updates. So a quick note on what the difference is. The 500, and it's really 400, 600, but I took an average here. No one knows for sure. That's kind of the background noise that you usually have when you see rankings go up and go down as far as, your keywords are concerned. You can't just get spot one and then wash your hands of it. Things come and things go and slight adjustments are made. That's what that is. The major algorithm updates, the bar chart on the right, and I broke it out by year. You can see 2012 was a very busy year for Google, but it's still making updates. These are things that impact huge swaths of the online world in big ways, and we'll get into a few of these. The penguin algorithm update, that's what the industry is calling it, the penguin update. They have all these fun animal names for some reason. That impacts thin content. We'll get into that as one of the reasons later on, okay? All right, moving forward. So reason 1 out of 10, your website is too slow. This is a major issue I see on a lot of websites, especially in the manufacturing space. There are a lot of factors that come into play when we're talking about site load time or the speed of your site. So the first question is, does Google care about speed? I'm telling you, yes. Google's saying yes as well too. This chart here is a speed test that I ran, and there's a link to that speed test at the bottom of the site, or bottom of the slide here. This is an actual Northeast Ohio, I'm not going to name names, manufacturing company, mid-size. Site load time is 9 seconds. You can see just in this chart where that places you, this site in regards to their competitors. This is excellent, good, fair, and poor, not in relation to everyone and anyone. This is not in relation to the Amazons of the world, not in relation to the Walmarts, any of these big players. This is in relation to the industry, the manufacturing industry. The top performers are sub 5 seconds, and in a perfect world, any site should be 3 seconds or below. Okay. Why speed matters? Okay. So speed, first of all, is equated to site quality. That's one of the things you really need to focus on. So we can see that in the previous site, which was a 9-second load time, that was on a 3G connection for a cell phone. Google likes to use lowest common denominator to test load times. Obviously, a lot of us are on, high-speed internet or even 4G, but not everyone is. You'd be surprised, especially in more rural areas. So we've got 9-second load time, and these are Google's numbers, equates to about a 30% loss in visitor traffic. That's big. All right, so one thing we need to know, UX is user experience, okay? Google cares a lot about user experience. A fast site is going to equal a positive user experience, a slow site, negative user experience. Google wants its users to have the best experience it can. Now, if math isn't your thing, oops, how about a simple one? A fast loading site makes Google look good. A slow loading site makes Google look bad. Why? And I know this is simple, but think of it from Google's terms. Google's job is to return relevant and powerful websites based on user searches or user queries. If Google's continuously giving me sites that I click on and they load real slow, I'm going to get real frustrated. And if Google consistently does that, I'm actually going to switch to another product that returns sites that better fit my needs. So the faster site loads actually helps Google, not just your site. So Google says, okay, I'm going to then benefit sites that load fast and provide, let's just say, to downgrade sites that actually load slow. So what can you do about it? All right. So this, whenever I see a page full of acronyms, I like to step back a second. I'll say one thing. You'll want to leave a lot of this. Some of this you can do on your own. But you want to leave a lot of this to the professionals. Things can get technical real quick. And a caveat and a warning, if you're doing this, if you do it wrong, some of this stuff especially, you will take down and break your entire site. It's really important that it gets done right, but you want to make sure that you have folks walking you through it or helping you through it. I'm only going to call out a few of these things here. Image optimization, that's something that actually a lot of you guys can do on your own. And this is usually the #1 cause, 9 times out of 10, of a slow loading website. If you've ever had a site that takes forever to load an image, it's because that image is not quote unquote optimized, meaning it's not at the right file size or dimension size for the load. And it's taken way too many resources to load that, all right? So optimizing your images is one thing you can do. The second issue, which gets a little more technical, is that third bullet there that I see quite often, is you need a robust server platform. How many times have you been on a site, during, a lot of times e-com suffers from this, folks that sell online, e-commerce. If a lot of folks are hitting your site at one time, it's taxing the server, and the server is basically just the computer that houses your website that tries to deliver the information that folks want. If you've ever tried to open up multiple applications on a slow desktop, it's the same thing, it freezes. Same thing with your website. Say e-commerce sites suffer from this, especially during Black Friday, which is coming up, or any other holiday. So having a good, robust server is often overlooked, but a huge plus and relatively simple adjustment. And the last one I want to talk about is an acronym-laden one, minimize HTTP requests. All you really need to know about that is every time a web page loads, it has to look for resources. The more resources it looks for, the longer it takes to load it. So the fewer requests you can have it to look for resources, the better. Okay. Reason 2, your website isn't mobile optimized. So speed is a factor, yes, which we just talked about, but so are other items. This is a quote from Google. Quote, our algorithms will eventually primarily use the mobile version of a site's content to rank pages from that site. So this is literally happening any day now. They were supposed to do what's called a mobile first indexing. This year, they pushed it back to beginning of 2018, which is good news for the folks that don't yet have a mobile optimized presence, but the time is short. So what Google usually, or has been doing, is taking your desktop version and saying, this is the penultimate, this is the version of your site that I should reference as the ultimate version of your site, and return that sort of content based on a mobile or desktop search. That's changing. Google will now look at your mobile site first, how it performs on mobile, and rank your site on that, and then look at your desktop site. Okay? And you can take a look at that picture on the right for just a quick gut check. If you're looking at your site on a phone, which does yours look like? Is it all your content squeezed into one frame, or is it more scrollable content with larger font sizes? Okay. So why should you even care about mobile? Well, globally, mobile searches overtook desktop 3 years ago. So more people in the world are searching on their phones for content than they are on their desktop computers. The US overtook this in 2015. So we were a little bit, as a country, behind as far as the mobile over desktop searches. Now, you may be looking at your own numbers and saying, well, folks on my site are not coming to us via mobile. And that's probably true for now. Generally, manufacturing sites, they have yet to cross the 50% threshold where more than 50% of folks are visiting your site via mobile. However, I challenge any of you to take a look at your analytics if you're tracking them and see which trend is trending quicker than the other. Are more folks over time coming to you via desktop? I would guess that that's pretty flat and static. Or do you see a rise in more folks coming to your site or trying to come into your site via mobile? I would bet that that's your growth curve. More folks coming in mobilely. Okay? So another thing about mobile too is don't think of it mobile versus desktop. I know I've kind of been talking in that way, but think of it as it's more complicated than just mobile v desktop. It's actually an entire ecosystem and an environment in which people are using are searching. So think of the way you even search. You may start on a desktop. You may then look it up on your phone, go back to your desktop. Maybe you're at home with a tablet and looking there as well too. Rarely these days are folks using one platform solely over the other. I don't care what industry it is. There's always cross-platform use when it comes to search. We can look at that USA chart there, and we can see, and I'm estimating, but it's about 70% of users of online searches are being performed on multi-device, with very few and a decreasing number, especially on desktop, being the only way that they engage with data. If you don't have, even if you're doing well on the desktop side, if you don't have a mobile platform or mobile, a good site that works well on mobile, and your competitors do, consider that their strategic advantage. If all things are being equal and you sell the same products or service as your competitor, 70% of research is done before they even pick up the phone. How are you displaying yourself to these folks, especially if they're doing multi-device searches for you? Okay. So what can you do about it? Well, the easy thing is make your site mobile friendly. There's lots that you can do for that. The icon in the bottom middle there, mobile responsive design. That's step one. Mobile responsive design is basically a single build website. You only have one website, but it self resizes based on the device type, the screen size. So you don't have to manage a mobile website and a desktop website like you used to have to do in the day. A mobile responsive design will actually do it for you. Now there's other items though. That's only step one. You want to make sure that you have mobile friendly software. I still run across too many websites that use Flash. Mobile will not render Flash at all. If you have a big motion image at the top of your site or a landing page or anything and it's Flash based, it will not display in mobile. They will not get that content. New mobile specific technologies. That's that AMP one there. AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. This is just one example of a lot of new mobile technology that's out there. I use this as an example. This is backed by Google. It's an open source, which means that anybody can work in it. A lot of different companies, a lot of search engines use it. A lot of developers use it. But what I want to try and get across with this one is Google and other search engines are consistently trying to get folks to make their sites faster and more adaptable on mobile. There are new technologies coming out all the time regarding this. Okay. My favorite one here is fat finger design. Just think about, mobile phone screen sizes are fairly large these days, but compare that to the size of your finger as you're pressing down on a button to click or as you're scrolling through. Big finger, fingers and clicking and easy navigation. You need to make sure that your site is set up properly for that sort of navigation. No pop-ups. Google will actively ding you for having, they're called interstitials, or having pop-ups on your mobile phone or on your mobile website, especially if it's the first thing that folks see. If they come to visit your site and they get a sign up for our newsletter before they take any action, or they get look at this deal, or here's a white paper, any of that stuff that overtakes your entire screen, you will get it's called a manual action placed against you, and Google will either remove you from index in the worst case scenario or demote you in ranking. Font size is the last one on this page. The pinch to zoom just won't cut it these days. People expect to be able to read the content on their phone without having to take extra action. Okay. Reason 3, nobody is linking to your site. Sounds so sad. Okay, so why is that important? Well, links tell Google who your site, quote, hangs out with. So this is a direct quote from Google. I'm going to read the bolded part. Links help our crawlers find your site and can give your site great visibility in our search results. Now for the rest of it, Google interprets a link from page A to page B as a vote by page A to page B. Votes cast by pages that are themselves important way more heavily and help to make other pages important. All right, what does that mean? Okay, to recap, it's a high school election. It's a popularity contest. The more popular your site is, meaning the more folks that are linking to your site, the more important Google thinks your website is. But you have to be popular in the right circles. Again, just like a high school election. I told you the dad jokes were here. You need to make sure that your site is quote unquote hanging out with the right websites. What do I mean by that? Well, why does Google care who links to your site? Well, links can do 3 things. They can build your authority, they can prove your authority, or they can destroy your authority or trust. Well-regarded sites, they pass on authority to your site. So if it's a Washington Post, CNN, these sort of folks linking to your site, those are high authority websites. They are passing their authority on to you. Google then also thinks that you are a site of authority and will give you ranking increases because of that. If your site is being linked to from poorly built bad user experience, spammy websites, and those are who your site, quote unquote, is hanging out with, Google is also going to associate you with those sites as well. And the third case is, which is arguably not as bad as the second, is no links to your site basically makes Google think that you're irrelevant. If nobody's linking to you, you have no content that anyone cares about. You have no information that anyone really needs. So therefore, no third-party sites are going to be linking to you. The internet is completely connected, and the better connections you have, the better your site will perform. So be careful what company your site keeps. A quick real-world example, JCPenney a number of years ago hired a not-so-great advertising agency or marketing firm to raise their SEO rank. For a while, JCPenney was ranking for things they shouldn't. If you typed in something like Kmart shoes, JCPenney would rank number one. Now, the industry is trying to figure out why that would happen. Turns out they were trying to game the system. What they did is they created a whole bunch of terrible quality websites, linked them all back to JCPenney. I'm talking thousands of websites linked back to JCPenney, and all of a sudden JCPenney had all this link authority. Well, Google caught on, de-indexed JCPenney for a month for any search term except their branded search term. I'm guessing that did a big number on their bottom line. Google has since adjusted the algorithm to do just what I talked about earlier, to say the site quality is very important. We know that through JCPenney, and actually BMW of Germany was caught for the same thing and also de-indexed for a while. Okay, so what makes a good link? Well, first of all, trustworthiness. How we define trustworthy in the world of linking is a whole nother presentation, to be honest. Google has basically a trustworthy checklist. That's my own terminology, not theirs. That says, this site is a good site and you want to link for this. The other thing is, how popular is the page that links to you? Just like you want to be popular, having a lot of quality folks link to you, the popularity of the site that's linking to you is also important. So that third-party site that's linking to you should also have a lot of links, a lot of quality links pointed to it. How relevant is the site linking to you in relation to yours? Let's say you're a manufacturer for steel bearings. It's much more relevant to get links from, let's say, steel companies, maybe the folks that supply you with the steel to make your bearings, folks that maybe do lubrication that you use in the bearings, industry publications, that sort of stuff. If you've got a bunch of cooking blogs pointing to you, even if you have more of those for whatever reason, just because the cooking blogs aren't necessarily bad, they're not relevant. They have no real connection to what you do or what your site is promoting. Therefore, those links are not as valuable as relevant links. The final item is keywords. For those of you that are familiar with the term anchor text, and those that aren't, quick recap. Anchor text is the linkable or the clickable part of words or images that you click on in order to be taken somewhere else. So it's the link that you click on. Too often I see read more, find out more, ask a question, whatever. Those are not keyword-rich anchor tags. Google really wants to take a look at what words are being used to link back to you for more indication of what that link is going to take them to. So in the ball bearings example, if we can say high-quality ball bearings or high-quality bearings, that's much more keyword-rich, and it provides Google with way more information about what that link is going to provide to the user than find out more. Okay. Reason 4, your content is thin. So what is thin content? Okay. Thin content references any web page that has very little valuable content. This could be pages that have hardly any content on it, or it could actually be pages that have a lot of content, but there's no value in that content whatsoever. All right, there's no ideal length per se. There's no put this, you at minimum have to have this many keywords. However, there have been studies that have been done that says Google much prefers long form content of 700 plus words. I talked earlier about Google's algorithms, the heavy hitting algorithms. This was the Panda one. They purposely released the Panda update in order to penalize sites with thin content. Okay, so thin content gets a lot of questions around it. How do I know if it's thin content? What do I do about it if I find it? So ask yourself these couple questions regarding the piece of content. One, would my users be upset if this page didn't exist? If this page wasn't on my website, would anyone care? If the answer is no, remove the page. If it's providing no service and no value, every page on your site should provide value and a service and a reason. If it doesn't, there's no point to it, remove it. If the page does cover a relevant topic, and will your readers find value in it? No? Then rewrite it to fit the user's need. Too often do I see pages that are trying to fit a niche, but the content is kind of an afterthought to just knowing that you need the page. You need to really have the content there that matches the user's intent for getting to that page. Here's another quick tip. If you have a bunch of pages that have maybe very little content on them, but they are valuable, maybe you've got a bunch of different product pages, and you're just writing a sentence or two about them, or maybe you've got a specific type of governing product that then has different subsidiaries to it, consider consolidating that content into fewer pages. That way, not only will you get rid of your thin content, but you'll actually consolidate your SEO value with keyword rankings. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. Reason 5. Duplicate content. So what is duplicate content? Well, this one's pretty self-explanatory. Not a lot of technical on this one. Duplicate content is exactly what it sounds like. There are multiple pages with the same content on it. This is another, as simple as it sounds, this is another one that carries a lot of questions on it. How much does it have to be 100% duplicate content? Is 50% duplicate content too much or too little? Is 75? What's the cutoff? Well, there's no specific, and Google has purposely never come out with a specific percentage that says if 51% of your content is original, it's not a duplicate page. They've never come out and said that. The reason is the pages, there is a time when duplicate content is needed in areas. For example, if you have boilerplate copy, if you have safety information, if you have any info that needs to be repeated throughout, there is a valuable and valid reason for that, and Google will not harm you for that. However, Google does like unique, well-written content, and they want to know who wrote it first, and I'll get to that point in a second as well, too. Google will say it understands that there is time and a place for duplicate content. However, this is their words, whenever possible, you need to provide unique, valuable content for the page. Last point on this one. Don't plagiarize anyone, not even yourself. So what do I mean by that? The internet is an open, exploratory sort of tool. You can go anywhere, read anything, see anything that you want. It's really easy to take a good piece of content, copy it over, and paste it into your site. You will absolutely get penalized from Google for plagiarizing. I've seen it happen. Now, even if you've written it yourself, you do not want to copy and paste that over. Google says that's their words, not mine. Well, basically, these are my words, but cutting through the chase, it's lazy to do that. They want you to actually put effort into the content that you provide to your users. Okay. In worst case scenario, now here are Google's words. If you are trying to duplicate your content across pages and across sites, Google will actively penalize you, the bolded part. As a result, the ranking of the site may suffer, or the site may be removed entirely from the Google index. Think JCPenney. All right? So we want to make sure that you are not running afoul of Google, even them accidentally thinking that you're taking duplicate content. Okay. So what to do about it? So if you've identified duplicate content, first thing, definitely rewrite the content to be unique and useful. That one's time-consuming, but an obvious fix. You can also just remove the duplicate pages. If you're thinking, I don't need this page, it already says it somewhere else, you can remove the page. You can also use what I'm going to call coded opportunities to identify the original pages. There is a time and a place where you need duplicate content throughout. Think if you're doing blog posting on your site and somebody else's site, you want to be seen as the industry leader, but you don't want to necessarily have to rewrite the same exact thing 2, 3, 4, 5 times. You can use what's called canonical tags. And what this does is says, Google, I know this is duplicate, but I'm pointing to the original. I need this content here in order for folks on this site to be able to read it. And remember, not all duplicate content is necessarily bad. sites in different languages. So if a site's in Spanish and in English, but it basically says the exact same thing, just in different language, Google's okay with that. Even same language sites for different countries. So if you're trying to target the UK or Canada and the US, and you have 3 different sites targeting each of those international locations, it is okay, generally, to use the same content. There are other issues with that, but at least you will not get hurt from Google. Boilerplate content, like I said, obviously is another one. And again, unfortunately, there's no magic no magic bullet for finding unique, to figure out if your unique to duplicate content ratio, is good or not. Really, it's a gut check. It's best judgment. Are you providing value to the user? If the answer is no, Google will also say no, and you'll run afoul. Okay. Reason 6, your content isn't optimized. So this is the bread and butter of any SEO, search engine optimization agency, or when you engage in any optimization. This is often called, quote unquote, traditional SEO. This is the on-page optimization. It's what most of us think of when we talk about optimization. If your site or your page isn't optimized, Google's going to think that you don't necessarily know what you're doing. They're going to degrade you versus sites that do know what they're doing. And this is my own definition. Content optimization is the act of making your on-page content more relevant to search engines and users. You want to make sure that you know what people are searching and how they're searching it, and that your content reflects that. It's very often the case where folks tend to think that they know what the user wants, and they will force them to try and speak in their own company's language or terms. You will not win online that way. You will not rank well in Google that way. What you have to do is understand how your users are searching and craft your content and your pages and your websites to capture that, at least at the onset. Then you can start telling them how you speak and using your own terminology. Okay. And if we look over to that right-hand side there, that little mock-up of just a generic old web page, believe it or not, basically every single item on that page can be optimized for search. Every one. We'll talk about a couple in the next slide, but just know it's just the tip of the iceberg. Again, this is another item that we can talk about for hours, and I have. Okay, so let's do a real-world example. Where to optimize your on-page content. Okay, title tags, very important. I'm not going to get into how to optimize it yet. I'm going to go just use this as an example to say where you can optimize it, especially in the most important areas. Your title tag is that part that it shows up here in the tab of any web page, but it's also the part that you click on when you do a Google search. It's that blue link that you click on to get to this page. That's your title tag. Very important. Internal linking. We talked about how it's important for third-party sites to link to you. Well, it's also important for your sites to link to themselves as well, too. This, again, provides clout and value to the linked pages, saying this page on my site is important, not only for third parties, but important for my folks as well, too, who are on my site. So you want to make sure that you're linking to it. Alt tags. For those that don't know, alt tags are ways that you can, it's a coded piece of content that you can put on any image or static piece of content that says what the image is. Google's getting okay. It's getting much better at figuring out what an image is. It's yet to use it in its algorithm. So basically, all it sees is the file name of whatever image is there and what's called an alt tag. You need that alt tag to describe what's there. You can use keywords to describe it, and it really helps Google index that image. Header tags. There are 6 kinds of header tags, H1 through H6. H1 being the most important, diminishing down as you go down to H6. Think of header tags, if you write a Word document, your header, your H1, it's just like you would a Word doc when you select that H1 tag or that H1 dropdown. It's saying this is basically the genesis, the information, the overarching information of what this page or this site is about, your header tag. Very important for on-page optimization. And then we've got the actual content itself. A few things important here. Keyword placement, content quality, and keyword density. So real quick, this is the first time I've actually used the word keyword, I think, in this entire presentation. Keywords are still important. They still have a place, but you can see it's a larger ecosystem now and much easier to anger Google or to get on Google's bad side than it ever has been. We used to talk about stuffing keywords and how that was a bad thing, and that still absolutely is a bad thing. What's more important now is not how many times the keyword appears, but where it appears, and what kind of keyword it appears as well too. Keywords that show up more early in the content are considered more important. Keywords that show up further down the page are generally less important. Keyword density, you want to have a good ratio. That's a whole other conversation as far as what we call latent semantic indexing on keywords. We won't get into that today, but it's how you choose keywords. We want to make sure that you have a good mix of types of keywords strewn throughout in a natural sounding way in your content. And then content quality. This is a big thing that actually Google looks at that a lot of folks don't think about. If you have typos, if you have grammatical errors, if your content isn't written at a certain grade level, Google will, that's one of the first things that computer systems were able to do, is to look at content like that and provide algorithmic information associated with it. You want to make sure that you speak professionally, that you have a decent level of grammar and understanding, and Google will take note. And then the very last thing, for this one at least, I want to talk about are meta descriptions. Meta descriptions you cannot see on your page. They're actually quote-unquote back-end copy, but they are what shows up when you do a Google search. We talked about the title tag, the part you click. Well, that description below the title tag is your meta description. Making sure that you are enticing visitors through that content to click on your content, to click on that blue link is very, very important. Okay, reason 7. Okay, users are engaging with your site. So what is site engagement? Also called user engagement. Basically, it's just how are people interacting with your site. Again, site engagement is the action visitors take on your website. A high engagement, sometimes called dwell time or scroll depth. These are all indicators of engagement. Dwell time just means how long you're on that site. Scroll depth is even if you're on one page, do you scroll down to see the rest of the content? That can mean that users are finding what they want on your search. Bouncing visitors, you've probably heard what's my bounce rate if you guys ever look at analytics. This could be another indicator. I say could be because we never know specifically if it is or not from Google, but there's strong indication that it is. If users are coming to your site, so they click that title tag on their search, they come to your page and say, oh, nope, not what I wanted, hit that back button, that's actually an indicator to Google that you do not have high quality content, and the user, on whatever search term they filled out, did not find a good match with your content. So, how do you foster high engagement? Well, there's a couple things. What you really need to do is you need to get people interacting, obviously, with your site. You need to get them on your page longer. You need them to click around a bit. So there's a few quick tricks you can do to do this. One is provide value in the content. Get them excited about your product or service. Make them want to learn more. That's obviously anything you want to do. You want to drive consumers to action, right? Give a user something to do. Make them do something. Make your page interactive. Click on the, click a button to do a calculator or to download a white paper or anything in order to get them to take an action on the site. Interlink relevant content, like we talked about interlinks within that page for on-page SEO elements. Heck, if you can have a enticing keyword anchor text that says something that makes them want to learn more about clicking on that, they'll click. That's a user interaction. There goes your bounce, even better. Use the right CTA. CTA stand for calls to action. You want to make sure that you target users with the right CTA at the right time. Not everyone is ready to buy now. That is a viable CTA, but a lot of folks are still doing the research phase. Learn more, download, sign up. All that stuff is also important as well, and that increases your user engagement. Reason 8, poor site structure. So what is site structure? Site structure is the way in which a website is organized. I've also heard it called, I use the term hierarchy often, and I've heard the term taxonomy. Taxonomy, not to get too in the weeds, it's actually something else, but it is something that people often call this. Basically, it's how your site is laid out. Ask yourself, did you originally build your website with a plan? Did you map it out? These are two examples of hierarchies or site structures here. The one on the left is a hub and spoke, and the one on the right is, I call it like the org chart style, the multiple folder level, okay? A lot of folks start with this. They'll start here, but then as their site matures, they'll just start adding pages and adding pages and adding pages with no real larger strategic vision of where things are being located, and you're left with very confusing and very opaque site structures. So why is that important? Well, the site structure is important because I like to think of it as like a highway system, all right? So it's a highway system that connects all your content. It's the path in which folks take to get to your content. Now, there are ways around it. I mean, you can adjust it with internal links and, you know, your navigation and all that other stuff. But in general, it's the crawling path or the click-through path that you use to get to information, okay? Quick side note on how Google actually finds content on your site. It uses what's called bots or spiders, and these are crawling your website all the time. They're always on, always out there. Basically, they're just little pieces of code whose only job is to travel to every website ever built and click through or follow links throughout the website to figure out what is there. It takes that information, reports back to headquarters, and headquarters, aka Google's servers, is where all the algorithm stuff happens. It says, oh, return this page on this page on this search, and so forth. What the bots are doing, they're data collectors. But the bots, the way that they work is they have to follow a link path. They cannot just jump around, randomly find information anywhere they want. They follow paths. Google also doesn't have, as big as they are, they don't have all the time in the world. You have what's called a crawl allotment. What the crawl allotment means is that bot or spider only has a set amount of time, usually nanoseconds, that it can be on your website. It has to crawl as many pages as it can and follow as many paths as it can within that amount of time. Sometimes instead of time, they use how much data it's consuming. And if you have a confusing site structure, you're wasting that crawl. And it may never, ever, ever get to the content that you want it to get to. Google, just like users, will abandon your site before they hit the info they need. Okay, so how to identify a well-structured, a well-designed site structure? Basically, it comes to this. Make sure you have a plan, group related pages together. Know that any page that's higher up in your hierarchy or your site structure is usually a more general page. You know, it talks about your services in general, and then your subpages get more detailed. And this also helps folks click through in order to learn more and more and more as they're learning about you. The last thing I want to talk about is unlinked, ungrouped pages are called orphan pages, and that leads us to number 9. So if a site has pages that aren't linked anywhere, you have an orphan page. And I just talked about how Google finds your pages. If it's unlinked, Google cannot get to that page. So an orphan page is a page or section of your site not linked to from the rest of your site. No matter how optimized, if that orphan page is super fast and load, if it's got all the right keywords, if it's got everything going for it, but Google can't find it, it doesn't exist, no matter what. You need to make sure that you have a solve for the orphan pages. And this happens often. This happens when you have a deal that's going on, when you add a new page because you need a new product, but you don't add it in the navigation, you don't link to it from the other page. Maybe you create a landing page just for social, but you want it in everything else. It's really important to make sure that you solve for that, and it happens more than you think. So once you've identified an orphan page, there's a couple options. Build a link. So you can say, I've identified this page. It should be linked to from X page. Build a link there. Include the page in your sitemap. Even if you don't want to include it on a link from some page over to the orphan page, your sitemap, which is another item we haven't gotten into, but basically that's just a map of your entire site that Google will crawl. And if you can provide that URL in that sitemap, Google now knows it exists. There's a third option that a lot of people don't know about. If you are connected with Google Search Console, it's your way to speak directly, quote unquote, speak directly to Google. You could submit that page ad hoc to say, Google, this page exists. Okay. And that leads us to the last reason here. Your site isn't secure. Okay. So why does Google want your site to be secure? Well, if people feel unsafe using the internet, guess what? That hurts Google's core business. If I'm getting hacked, if I'm downloading viruses, all this stuff, I'm probably going to take my business elsewhere. If it happens on Google a lot, I'm going to see if DuckDuckGo or Bing or Yahoo or anybody has a better service. Google wants to protect users from, downloading virus and everything, but it also wants to protect itself. It's still business. Therefore, from Google in 2014, very rarely do they come out and say what actually is a ranking signal. They said, we're starting to use HTTPS, that's the security protocol for your website, as a ranking signal. Now, it started out as a low signal, but they're starting to amp it up a little bit to say it's providing more and more SEO or search engine value to specific sites. And that item on the right there, I forced that error, but you can see if you have an unsecure site and someone tries to access it via the security protocol for some reason, you will get a giant, your connection is not private. And I think we've all come across that every once in a while when we click the link and we get that. And guess what? I'm not continuing on. I'm trusting the browser and leaving. Okay. But I always hear like, but I'm not collecting any sensitive info. I'm not asking people for payments. I'm not getting their email addresses. I'm not getting any information. Well, even if your page doesn't collect information, Google will still warn users of a non-secure connection. And obviously, if they're using it as a ranking signal, you're losing out on the rank. And if your competitor has it, and all things being equal, guess who's outranking you? So it's very, very important. I used a local Northeast Ohio content marketing institute here to display this. This is a real example. Okay. So the last item I'll talk about is how to make your site secure. So how to solve for it. An SSL. This is the security license that your site needs to have in order to be considered quote-unquote secure. It's not as hard as it looks, though I still would recommend working with your network developer or your hosting provider to get it installed on your site. They're relatively cheap. It can be a bit intimidating to do. And then that last point there, ensure Google indexes the proper version of your site. So if you were to install your security certificate, now you've got two versions of your site. You've got the HTTPS, which means your site's secure, but you still got that non-secure version out there. And you're going to run into what we talked about before, duplicate content. Now you've got two exact replicas of your site throughout. Also, even if you don't, even if Google doesn't hurt you for having duplicate content, you're splitting SEO value. Two pages are competing for the same keywords, and Google doesn't know which one to return. So it's just going to split the SEO value down the middle, and everybody, both pages lose. So you really need to make sure that you have your proper redirect set up in place. Okay, so just to recap, 10 items. 1, your site is too slow. 2, duplicate content issues. 3, your site isn't mobile optimized. 4, users aren't engaging. 5, lack quality inbound links. 6, poor site structure, thin content, orphan pages, and your content isn't optimized for search, and your site isn't secure. And with that, those are the 10 reasons and why you should care and what you can do about it.
So, John, we have one question, and if anybody else has questions, feel free to submit those now. The question is, do bots ever show up in your analytics?
Good question. Yes, they can. If you're using Google Analytics or any other analytics software, one of the best things you can do is use the filter feature, and you can actually filter out the IP addresses or even the bot names based on the bots that are coming through your site. Now you'll need a network person to figure out which one's the bot and which isn't. For the most part, they don't really impact a lot of your analytics, so I wouldn't worry too much about them, but best practices say that you should filter out any bot traffic. Good question.
Perfect. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. I'll give it just a minute here, but we greatly appreciate you all joining us over your lunch hour today. And we would be more than happy to follow up with you offline if you've got a more detailed question that you wanted to discuss in one-to-one fashion, as well as this webinar will be available after the event in a recorded format. So we thank you very much for your time today. And again, syncshow.com will be where you can find this as a recorded event. Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody.